Water is the single most important substance in our existence. We can't live without it. Some of us put a bunch of sugar and syrup in it so it tastes good, or let wheat ferment in it so it feels good. Don't worry, our kidneys will just filter it out. Because no matter what form, our bodies need this chemical so our cells can transport oxygen properly. Hey, what's up? It's Wellboy, and today it's all about water, what it does, how it works, and why we use it in our stories and media. Before getting into the symbolism, we need to talk about the function of water from its origins to its usefulness. Let's start with where it came from. Scientists believe the water on Earth arrived as a comet of ice, and has been here ever since, unable to leave the confines of our atmosphere. But the water doesn't just sit there waiting perfectly still to be used by whatever comes by. Water undergoes its own separate yet connected states of being called the water cycle. The water cycle doesn't really have a beginning, as you wouldn't say a wheel has a starting point, but we can use a body of liquid water as our first stage. Water, as we commonly think of it, is liquid and calm. But then heat from the sun's rays causes water to break apart, small enough that it's carried away by the air in a process called evaporation. While in the air, it is in a state of matter called gas. The gas continues to rise up until it is stopped by the thickness of our atmosphere. Over time, these gas particles form a crowd called a cloud. After a while, the crowd becomes too big, and what was once a fluffy white cloud turns into a dark and brooding cloud. The air around this cloud can no longer support the cloud's weight, so these particles of water once again concentrate into droplets of liquid, falling on any plants or creatures that happen to be under it. The water that falls on the ground is either absorbed or gathers so much in one spot that it piles up on itself and flows smoothly, possessed by gravity, along the path of least resistance. These paths get worn down smoother and smoother until you have a river or stream that connects all the way back to where we began, at a body of water, only to start the cycle all over again. Oh, and if it's too cold, the water freezes on its way down, but it's basically still the same process, just slower. So why did I explain all that? Just to make sure we're all on the same page. Not everybody cares about this in class, because let's face it, some teachers aren't engaging enough to compete with our phones. Which is not totally their fault. I suppose the blame can be split between the kids, the parents, the teachers, the school system, and the elites of Silicon Valley. Nobody's perfect. But anyway, the water cycle is important to have a basic grasp of since it's so reflective of human life. If you think about it, we, as living organisms, are constructed by particles from the earth, aka nutrients and minerals, while we are being gestated in the womb. And much like a drop from a rain cloud, we are cast from our place in the ether and sent out to live on Earth, to become part of a stream called the human race. Eventually, we stop moving and our particles dissolve back into the Earth, the cloud from which all of our particles came from in the first place. But it's not just the human life that flows like water. Our currency acts much in the same way. That's why the root word is correre. If you think about it, most people spend their lives holding out their hands to try and grab whatever money they can hold onto. But much like trying to capture water, it tends to flow out of our hands pretty quickly. Some people take this further and build a little bowl to hold this liquid money in. We call it a bank account. There are a few people who are able to build large dams of institution and control the flow of money, so they can tell us what to do while they hand us a few drops here and there. Money, much like water, makes the world go round. Money grants freedom, and when it's paired with imagination, it can make things happen for better or worse. But that's enough preaching. I'm not actually against capitalism as an idea, only the way it's currently being implemented in my country. I was also going to go off about electrical currents, but I'll save that for the eventual electricity video. So now, let's look at some other ways water is essential. Most living creatures bigger than a microbe cannot survive without water, so it always has to be accessible in some way. In a metaphorical sense, it's like there's an invisible rope that's connected from everyone individually to all the fresh water on Earth, and we can't let the rope get too long or things will start to turn desperate. This is why water in fiction is always used as this metaphor for life. It's objectively the thing that grants us life. And in case you forgot, we are literally made up of 70% water. We're basically bone-in water balloons. But now let's look at some movie metaphors involving water. When characters are going down the river in a boat, it's either a contemplative moment or a harrowing moment, because changes in a person's life either occur during deep contemplation or times of great chaos. So the river is a microcosm for the character's life, and whatever happens on the river is representative of a larger problem the character needs to get over. Another example of the flow of water being synonymous with life is the song I'm sure I don't have to explain, But since this is YouTube and not everybody is going to understand the example given, I'm just going to say that rowing your boat gently down the stream is the key to living life. Judging from the seemingly related phenomena of quiet quitting and the growing negative sentiments toward hustle culture, everyone is starting to really believe in this old piece of wisdom from our childhood. After all, the song doesn't say, row, row, row your boat fast and vigorously down the stream like it's filled with sharks. Not to go on a tangent, but isn't it weird how the song ends with, life is but a dream? It's a very Buddhist sentiment for a Western folk song. Going further into the water equals life idea, do you ever notice that when things are terrible in fiction, water is always hard to access or it's being controlled in some way? But then, when the protagonist topples the evil regime, water always comes back and is accessible to everyone. It's a brutal but straightforward way to depict oppression. So if you make art that has water, make sure it's teeming with life, flowing and vibrant, because in most cases, water is a metaphor for the ebb and flow of life. But there is one other way to portray water I haven't told you about, which is the exact opposite of this. And that example is when water is not flowing.
Commonly known as stagnant water.
What happens in stagnant water? Since it's not flowing and not evaporating fast enough, this stagnant water quickly begins to accumulate bacteria, and creatures start laying their spawn in it. None of the waste gets eliminated, so this pool of water becomes grimy and full of filthiness. Stagnant water births wretched creatures and smells. Not to get all political, but this is what happens with money too, when it accumulates in certain areas and doesn't flow properly to new areas. The stagnant pools of money lead to corruption over time because nobody wants money to flow through the useful channels, like towards emerging markets or back into the communities it came from. They want to collect it within their own net worths and not allow it to seep back into the rest of the economy where it can provide value to more people. This leads to unethical practices with the intention of pouring more of this currency into bloated stagnant pools of over-leveraged capital investment. This is also exactly why we don't see technological progress as rapidly as we should, because many powerful interests are heavily bought into outdated businesses. But going further into this idea of stagnant water on the personal level, when we are stagnant in our lives, we aren't progressing, we ruminate on things we should be getting over, and our pastimes become more and more harmful just to get a small crumb of feel-good brain chemicals. This is why activities where progress and fulfillment are flowing is so important to living a healthy reality. So sorry if this video got a little too real or existential, but I really enjoy the metaphors associated with water since they're so pervasive. But if you want to see something a lot more lighter, then you should definitely check out my video on moon symbolism. It's chill.